See this right here? I've got a story to share with you about this right here. You know what this is? This is a beer hop from Eastern Washington, and it comes from the vast crops that are grown here every single year in Eastern Washington to provide beer makers with the hops that they need across the country to be able to make beer for you to drink. And I've got a story about how the hops plants around where I live, have a message for us. So I want to share that story with you about beer hops and the message and what it took for me to get there to receive that message. Here we go. All right. Holding this thing feels really odd to me right now, but I want to hold it for just a little while longer to show you the first thing about this story that I have to share with you. And that is, if you take a really good close look at it, let me bring it in here on the camera. Woo! Take a really close look at that. What does it look like? Kind of looks like a pine cone. What else does it look like? Kind of looks like a pineal gland, right? You know, third eye kind of stuff. So when I first moved here to Eastern Washington about 4 years ago from Colorado, I'm a Colorado country girl, so I'm not a stranger to crops and land and cycles and seasons and irrigation and ditches and, you know, all that planting and all that good stuff. But when I first started walking the ditch line and look at the crops and seeing this thing grow, like, it is a whole other world. You know, hop country is a whole other world. And so that's part of what I want to bring to you here. Let me go ahead and put this down and let's go ahead and set the stage, because there's a few things I gotta line up so that the story makes sense. All right, the first thing I want to line up is that in my background, I am a psychic medium. I work in body-based money relationship. That's where I've put a lot of my energy over the last decade. Recently, I've started to put my psychic mediumship into money, mediumship with color and art. That's been going on. And about a year ago, I went viral, and I've also helped on the front lines of basic intuitive skills for the Great Awakening that's going on in doing psychic reads on 3D energy landscape. Well, as I went through a transformation this summer, my spirit team began to make it very clear that they want me to begin to use my gift a little bit more focused in the 5D landscape. And so I would call it more like me coming on here to video and talking about 5D news, or me looking at things and seeing them through the 5D filter. Because at this point, we're all doing this crazy thing of living in both 3D space and 5D space, and learning how to navigate that is a little bit crazy making. And so the stories that Spirit World wants me to bring is to share about amplifying what it is like to look through a filter into that 5D energy space. And this story definitely has that going on. All right, so that's anchor point number one. Anchor point number two that I briefly mentioned is like, I'm used to the country. You know, I was born and raised in Colorado, spent most of my life in the country, a lot of my time outdoors, both in the mountains, but also in agricultural country. So I am not a stranger to seasons and the planting and the cultivating and the watering and all the things, you know, a lot of the things that go into farming, successful farming. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I did definitely grow up around it. So I have an understanding of the different activities that happen and what that looks like. And then, you know, getting to the end of the season and harvest and bringing in a crop, and then the land going dormant for the winter time. And so I am used to seeing that and being around that. And so when I moved from Colorado after my divorce, when I moved from Colorado to Washington, I moved to Eastern Washington out in the country. I moved to a place that all the crops around me are predominantly beer hops or hop crops, right? And so it has been fascinating to me. Like, I get my dog out, Peanut. I go on many, many walks. And as we're out there, we get to watch this whole transformation, all these seasonal things that go on with hop farming and activities and how the crops get planted and then cultivated and the watering and how they grow and then the harvest season and what that all looks like. So I've been through that now probably 3 years. So I've seen 3 or 4 seasons or 3 or 4 hop harvests and everything that goes into it and what that means locally, but also what that means nationally and internationally. Because when I got here, one of the things I learned that, the folks here are loud and proud about is this is not just beer, this is not just hop growing for beer for local stuff. No, it's predominantly for, the hops grown here is predominantly for the United States. And there are international brewers that also come in here to purchase their hops so that they can brew beer in other parts of the world. So it's a pretty big deal. What is going on here is a pretty big deal. Where I live, though, it feels very local, and it's, all part of what we live with and what we're used to here. And so this year was a little bit different because, the last couple of years is Peanut and I have walked the canals and the edges of the fields. We have not walked into the fields. To me, farmland is private and you don't go wandering out onto a farmer's farmland, right? And so we have steered clear from doing that. But this year, about middle this summer, I had something happen that was a little bit different. And me, with my spidey sense and my psychic sense, we got, Peanut and I got about partway through the summer, and there was a feeling, and I could begin to hear some of the voices speak to me a little bit and go, Dana, it would be a good idea for you to begin to walk some of the hop rows. And I'm like, really? Because to me, that kind of felt like off limits. You don't do that, right? Not unless you know the farmer. Well, but that feeling, that sensation kept growing. And so finally, one day out on this walk, and it's middle of the summer, it's hot, everything's crazy in the country. And my spirit team was really, really encouraging me to do this. And there's Jasper. He is weighing in on all of this. And so I got to the edge of a field to walk down a row. And all of a sudden I felt this stop, this feeling of stop. And so I stopped and I tuned in and I listened. And there was a feeling of you need to ask permission of the land and the plants. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. And there's a couple of things going on with that. One of them is that right around that time, I had already done a couple videos talking about tree talking. And if you spend any time on TikTok, there are people who have videos about stopping and talking with the trees, stopping and talking with the plants. And so that was already kind of in my head, and I was kind of already beginning to do that. And so when I got drawn to the edge of the field to walk into the field, and then I got that cue of you need to ask permission. Well, that made sense because I was stepping into the space of the plants, right? But there's a number 2 thing that you need to know about that goes with that. And I know I'm getting a little bit complicated here because I think it's important. The number 2 thing is as I have been living here in Eastern Washington and tuned in with the energies and the galactics above and the beings on the land, this is what I will tell you. There are ancients who live in and watch over these fields. And what's been very interesting to me is that as I have driven around in the country here, done errands back and forth between town and here, there have been so many times I've been driving along and I've seen these huge whirlwinds out in the fields, especially after harvest is over because the fields are empty. And during the fall, winter, early springtime, it is very easy to see the whirlwinds going on, right? Well, when I see whirlwinds, to me, it's not only a natural anomaly. To me, it's oh, there's an ancient. And I really, really got this and understood this when I lived in southwestern Colorado, in Durango, Colorado, with all the mesas and the ancients there. You would be out alone on an empty country road, and there would be a whirlwind come through, and you could hear voices with it. It's the ancients. And so when I get here to Eastern Washington and the hop crop gets cleared out from harvest, and you see those whirlwinds going on here, it's not just a whirlwind. Those are the ancients walking the land. Those are the ancients come down from the glaciated hills around here that come down and walk around in the hop fields. And so to me, I feel like there's already a really powerful ancient presence here anyway. And so when I got asked to step into that hop field, asking permission, I got drawn and invited to step into that hop field. But when I got to the edge of the hop field and I was requested to ask permission first, it wasn't only just I was asking permission of the plants. I was asking permission from the ancients who watch over those plants. All right. So it was kind of a dual force thing. And as that's all happening, I'm feeling the energy rise. And so, I do a little bit of a sacred ceremony on the edge of the field, ask for permission to step in. And I was literally told which row to walk down. Like the row that I was standing at, I got to know. And they were like, step back. And they gave me guidance to go down the row that they wanted me to walk down. So I begin to do this, and that's when I begin to have this feeling of this collective, intelligent presence of the thousands upon thousands of hop plants in this field. And so when I do step through the envelope into the hop field to begin to walk down for the first time, walk a full-on hop row that is beginning to mature a little bit, that is beginning to have some of these hanging on the vines, like a very, very powerful experience, right? And that's when I begin, and as I'm walking through, that's when I begin to notice that these hops right here that look like a pineal gland, the videos that I'm showing, you'll see they're hanging in clumps. They're hanging like chandeliers from these plants, from the vine. The vines go way up, and these things are hanging like chandeliers. And me knowing what I know about pineal glands and high vibrations, so I'm really aware, like, oh my God, the presence of the plants, the presence of the ancients, the presence of a pineal gland type seed. Oh my God. So I am walking down this row of hops, knowing all of this and feeling all of this and feeling the vibrational frequency rising. And the crazy thing is, guys, you know how it's been in the United States. You know how our world has gotten rocked. You know how crazy it has been. And some, and it's hard for me too. And that first time that I walked down that hop row, those plants and those ancients with all that hop pineal energy, they gave me an adjustment. They gave me an attunement. By the time I walked out of the other end of that row, I felt like I was realigned. I felt like everything that was out of kilter, it was like they cleaned me out, lined me back up again, and when I got to the end of that row, I was like, whoop, whoop, I felt good again. I felt good again. It was like this most amazing, sacred walk down this hop plant row. And I got to the other end, and at the other end, there's agricultural stuff going on at the other end. And so, that's where me and Peanut found ourselves. So we got to the other end, we hung out there just a little bit, and then it was time to come back. So we turned around and we came back through that hop row, and I'm just marveling at the whole thing, looking around, talking with the plants, and it was pretty cool. And by the time I got to the other end of the row, like I felt like a different person. I felt better. Oh, and the other thing I should say is like, and it being hot, a hot summer, hot into the fall, when I stepped into those rows, the temperature dropped. There was a cool down. There was like, I swear it was like anywhere from a 5 to 10 degree drop. It was cool. And the plants, cleaned me up and reattuned me and then spit me back out the other side. And I was like, oh my God, I felt good. And so the rest of the summer into the fall, I looked forward like almost every day. If I could get out there to this one location that I had permission to do that energetically, that I had permission to do that. If I could get out there, I was out there almost every day getting a pineal hop attunement from the hop plants. So I share this very private thing with you to set the stage so you understand the power and the gravitas of the message that the hop plants gave me at the end of the summer. So here's the deal. This is how it happened. So I went through probably about 6 to 8 weeks. I'm thinking I went through about 6 to 8 weeks of enjoying, truly enjoying walking down the hop rows and talking with the plants and getting adjusted and getting cleared and getting attuned and back in my body. Like the hop fields really helped me do that for a while. And so I had enjoyed that for a while, and then I got the message one day that I needed to bring my camera with me, my video camera with me. And so I did. I brought out my camera. And I did videotaping of the experience. That's a lot of the imaging that you see here. Like I got told to videotape and to be able to share what it was that I was experiencing and have images of that. So I did that one day and then brought the video back. Spirit Realm didn't want me to share it yet, so I've just kind of held on to it. And then a couple of days after the videotaping, it wasn't right away, but a couple of days after that, I went back out to this one part of the field. Peanut and I are out there, and I get guided to, the specific row and ask permission and do my little ceremony, and the field opens up and lets me enter in. I mean, it's a thing. You ask permission, and you can feel the field open up. And then you get allowed in. And there are days I was not allowed in. There were days I got told no. So I honored that. Those were days I did not walk the rows. But there was this one particular day shortly after videotaping that I got drawn to this particular row and asked permission, and I was allowed into the field energetically. I get into the row like a good dozen steps, like I'm in the field. And then I hear and kind of feel this feeling of like, stop. So I stopped and I'm listening. And then I really loudly, clearly heard like, we have a message for you that we want you to deliver. And I'm like, okay. And there was this feeling of exchange of kind of like, you have enjoyed being in the field and experiencing with us. And we've done some really nice things for you. And now we're going to request that you do something for us. And I'm like, I totally can do that because I am a messenger. That's what I do here on the planet. So they're like, we've got a message for you that we want delivered out into the world. And I'm like, okay. So I got really quiet and I really started tuning in. And that's when I looked up. Now, mind you, it is a completely still day, no wind at all. And I look up. I don't have a video camera with me, and I look up, and not all the plants, but there were a couple on the vine, and I could see the plants doing this. They were just moving back and forth. Not all the plants. Just a couple that were just like, they were just moving, and I got real still. I got real still, and I watched that for a while, and I'm like, oh my God, they're moving. And if you see the people who talk with the trees, and some of the trees will move to touch people, like if I had not seen those videos, it would have been really hard for me to believe what I saw. But the fact that I saw those videos and I knew what I was clocking, and I checked, double checked. There was like no wind at all. And the fact that it was only a couple doing this. It wasn't all of them doing it. It was just a couple. So it was as if to say, like, we are really tuned in to give you this message. Like, this is really, really real. So, and this is what the hops plants said. They basically said, it was something along the lines of, we love who we are, and we love what we do. We love being these hop plants, doing this and spreading joy out into the world, because these are spirits. Think about that. I mean, I've gotten so many chuckles about how ancients coming down from the hills and spinning their whirlwinds in these fields, because it's spirits, and it's laughter and joy. It can be laughter and joy. And so the first part of their message was like, we really enjoy who we are. We really enjoy what we do. We really enjoy what we can provide, as long as it's healthy. All right. And then the message shifted. And the messaging basically said, but we can't continue to do what we do and provide what we provide as long as we continue to be treated the way we are being treated. And that rocked me back on my heels. And this is where I need to fill in a few more of the blanks here for you. And that is, I think probably the first thing I can say is, these hop fields, these are mass-produced hop fields. I don't, from what I could tell, there's very few mom and pop shop hop fields left. From what I could pick up on the chatter and on the wire, it's just a handful of hop producing families and farms. All right. And they're doing this hop production in a very mechanized, synthetic kind of way. So first, very mass produced. And like, just to give you an idea, the farm country that I grew up in 1980s, northeastern Colorado, there were mom and pop farms and hired hands. Like, there was a farmer, and the farmer would have maybe one or two hired hands to help out. That is not the case in Eastern Washington hop growing country. It's basically these mass-produced farms, this mass-produced farming that is worked by farm workers. Like, and there's a huge difference. And I will say this: these farm workers are primarily brown-skinned people. The immigrant population, by and large, is what produces hops and beer making for our country. The other thing that you need to know about is there is a high usage of chemicals, pesticides and fertilizers like this. If I picked this from a field, which I did not, this was actually another one of those cases of there was a hop plant that was growing wild on a big pile of rocks. And so I took a couple of hops from it, but I would not drink beer from this for a number of reasons. The chemicals used to produce the beer is so heavy duty that there are hardly any insects here. And this is what I will tell you about what I have learned about living here in Eastern Washington. Grew up in northeastern Colorado, was totally around farmland there. Spent time around farmland in the country in the Durango, Colorado area, the San Luis Valley area, and also Paonia, Colorado, North Fork of the Gunnison area. Every single area, there were insects. Always insects. When you're in the country, there are insects, okay? Where I live here in Eastern Washington, there are barely any insects. There is no buzzing around. You get to the heights of the summer, and usually in the country, in the heights of there's a buzzing of all the different diversity of insects, right? Not here. And so There are so many chemicals used here. The diversity of the insect population has been predominantly killed off. The biodiversity of the soil, from what I can tell, I'm pretty sure the soil is dead. And what I learned about being in the North Fork of the Gunnison and all the different types of biodiverse kind of soil that can be cultivated, that is not being done here. And so when the hop plants said to me, we can no longer do what is being asked of us to continue to do, because of the farming practices. When I walked down those rows and communed with the hop plants and had an interaction with them for those 6 or 8 weeks this summer, one of the thoughts that I had was, how many other people are doing that? Of all the people who work the fields and own the fields to produce hops for beer, how many are doing a sacred walk down those plant rows and communing and talking with the plants and asking them what they need? I think that's probably a very rare occurrence. And so the end of this message that the hop plants gave to me, it was basically like, we want to keep doing what we're doing. We love what we're doing, but we need more support. We need recognition. We need honor. We need respect. And to me, it was a feeling of like the soil needs to be supported for the plant, and the misuse of the chemicals that needs to shift and change, and how the mechanization is used needs to shift and change, and the recognition of this plant and all the diverse aspects of it need to be recognized. And the feeling that I got from the hops towards the end of the message of them parlaying this to me was this feeling or sensation of like, we can't go much further. We can't go much further unless things change. And so to me, this is the hop plant kind of like writing on the wall, harbinger, them saying, hey, we've gone as far as we can and we're just about ready to run into the wall, which tells me that something, the hop plant saying this and the ancients being involved, they would not give a message like this unless they meant it, right? And so this is me being a messenger, parlaying this message saying, hey, we have another crop. And I think we're seeing this with farmland and farming and crops across the country of us hitting a certain wall with our agriculture as far as the way that it has been done in industrialization and mechanization. We're beginning to hit a wall with not being able to do it with the practices that we've been doing it for a while because, Mother Earth literally cannot support those practices anymore. And the hop plant in Eastern Washington from this field literally said that to me and wanted me to get that message out into the greater world. And so this is me doing my job, as outlandish as this all seems, and we're going to need to watch what happens with the hop plant, and hopefully we pay attention to that and begin to change some of our practices, because my hunch is if we do not change practices with this plant and other plants, it's probably going to be taken care of for us so that we do change and we do begin to find new ways of working with plants, with plants and harvesting and providing food for ourselves on this planet at this time. All right, so that's the message that the hop plants had for me. They closed that out. I was pretty much vibrating as they closed that out. I did the walk. I came back out just kind of reverberating, soaking up the message, came back, wrote it down, that kind of thing. And here's what's interesting. After the hop plants, that field gave me that message, the field shut down on me. Like The next time Peanut and I went back to walk the field, it closed up. Like, I was not really allowed to go back into that field. And it was several days after that. That field got harvested. Like, I came around the bend, I was up a little bit on a bluff, and I came around the bend one day, and sure enough, the harvest trucks and the mechanisms that are used to harvest the field, they were coming along. And I do have to say, I grieved. I definitely grieved some, because my friends, the hop plant, it was all gone. And so Peanut and I have been walking out in those fields a little bit, asking the permission, walking along, but it definitely has not been the same. And I did take some footage this morning. I wanted to take some footage and show all of you what an empty hop field looks like after the harvest is all over. Yeah, so this is me coming to you with that message. And the next time you drink some beer, just know it probably came from my neck of the hopwoods. I think it's important that we keep an eye on this crop and changes that can happen with growing what we know as a hop plant. So it is time to close this out for now. That's what I've got for you. Thank you for being here. Make sure you keep walking forward to meet those miracles along the way. And I will see you in my next video.